Hey, before we get to today's great episode, wanted to let you know of a new exciting thing going on for the Lounge. For the first time since we started this podcast, the Lounge has entered into a partnership with a company that is aligned in how we think. Completely stop gambling. So Betttr is giving away 200 free subscriptions for life to the first 200 users from this podcast. Download Betttr, find the link in the show notes, or searching Betttr in your app store. So it's Betttr, BETTR, quit gambling. Search for that on the App Store or click into the link in the podcast show notes. So I'll see you on Betttr. And now to today's episode. Welcome into the Gambling Recovery Lounge. My name is Eric, and I'm a compulsive gambler in recovery.
And my name is Alyssa, and I'm also a compulsive gambler in recovery.
Welcome, everybody, to the first experience of our new podcast. What we're going to do on the first episode, Alyssa and I are going to talk to each other about our gambling journeys and our time in recovery so that we can introduce you to us. So really quickly, Alyssa, just because we're going to jump in right here, when's the last time you made a bet?
April 2nd, 2019.
So you're coming up on 5 years.
5 long years, long hard years, but really wonderful years.
If I would have said to you 5 years and a month ago, you would never make a bet again, what would you
I would tell you to F off. Because that wasn't going to happen. I was so obsessed. There was no way that I could ever see myself not being back in action. But here we are, and life couldn't have been better.
Here we are. I'm coming up on 3 years on June 15th, if we're lucky enough to make it that far. I drove myself into a 25-year plus addiction from gambling. We'll explore a lot of that in this episode and many to come. I thought I was going to die 2 years and 9 months ago from this addiction. And I imagine maybe you felt pretty similarly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was broken when I went to my first GA meeting, and I was starving, too. So I was hoping they had some donuts there, but they didn't. But they did have recovery.
So cool. That's so cool. So you went to GA for the first time for donuts?
Yeah, because I was hungry and broke, and I didn't have any money. So I thought, shoot, I know they have coffee and donuts. I see it all the time on TV. I go in there. There's no coffee. There's no donuts.
Did you stay?
I stayed because there were some really interesting stories, and I could identify with what people were saying. And it blew my mind because I really did not think that anybody had a crazier story than me. But we all have the same crazy story. It's crazy.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that? Yeah, I mean, I resisted GA forever because when I was first told about GA from my therapist a few years back, I pictured like all the worst case scenario of what I saw like on movies, right? Like everyone would be in the church basement, which, you know, of course, that's true. There are meetings in church basements, right?
Yeah.
But I imagine everybody being 80 years old and chain smoking and
pissed off.
And like, I was a total fucking isolationist, right? Like,
yeah.
I didn't want to tell anybody about my life and my problems. And, you know, I'm gay and there's going to be no gay people in Gamblers Anonymous, right? That's impossible, right? Nobody will understand me.
Think about now.
Like, it's so delusional to what the true reality is, right? Yeah, man, like, the shit we do to avoid getting help when the miracle is just right in front of us that we both experienced, right?
Had to hit rock bottom. Very expensive lesson.
Very expensive lesson. One of the things that Alyssa and I are going to do throughout this podcast, we're going to bring on a lot of people to interview in our immediate circle of recovery. And both of us are blessed to be in Los Angeles, California, sort of the birthplace of Gamblers Anonymous. And there's a ton of recovery here. So we're going to bring on a lot of people locally as well as around the country that we've met on our journeys. Really specifically, we both have very unique experiences because we're both in relationships. Alyssa's married to her wonderful husband, Sebastian. My partner, Edgardo, I've been with forever. And we both have very unique stories related to those relationships. And We're going to bring those guys into the discussions as well to talk about the journeys, because there's a lot of podcasts out there about gambling addiction, but none that really talk intimately about how other people are affected in our lives about gambling addiction. We're going to certainly hear our own stories about our addiction. We're going to bring on people to talk about their addiction and their stories as well. But we're going to bring on people that really are talking about how they're affected by the gambler, because it's important to tell that story as well. Because I think, as we've both learned, we hurt the people that are closest to us. And for those of us lucky enough to have people stick by us and go through the journey, that's part of the miracle, right? Wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah, it's unbelievable. I mean, I never thought about the other side when I was gambling, but to hear those affected by our gambling and how they felt, it just blew my mind. I mean, it's almost as bad. And, it wasn't their decision. So it kind of opens your mind and really shows that it reaches out more than just, it affects more than just you in a very negative way. So it'll blow your mind, yeah.
So, Alyssa, let's talk about your story first. So when would you say was when you first got really introduced to gambling?
I first got introduced to gambling pretty late in life, like in 2015, and it was on a cruise ship, and I was just, gambling for fun, because it was part of the activities of the boat. But I didn't really gamble that much before that. I would just go to Vegas with my girlfriends, on the weekends, and maybe gamble for with $20. And that was it. And I never had the bug. But when I was on this cruise ship, I won a jackpot. And Eric, that was the worst thing that could ever have happened to me. Because while it didn't give me the bug right away, I went home. I didn't think much about gambling. I enjoyed the money that I won. But I did see a commercial on television and realized that there were casinos that were a lot closer than Vegas. And so I decided to check one out one weekend. And then I just kind of would go on the weekend, maybe once a month. And then it got progressively, more and more. But then I got sick and I had a brain aneurysm. And then when I came out of the hospital, I started to gamble real heavy at that time. And I think it's because I was in such a bad place. I felt really sorry for myself that I had to sort of start things over again at such a kind of impactful time of my life. I had reached a peak in my career, and I was, doing all the things I said I was going to do, and I was really happy. But then gambling made me happy. It kind of filled that void because it was something that I could be good at after, losing all of the skills that I had learned over 25 years of my career. All I had to do was push a button, and, you can have a brain aneurysm and still figure out how to push a button. So that's what happened. And it just, then I met my now husband, Sebastian, and took him to the casino for the first time. And he won a jackpot. And I think that exacerbated the situation quite a bit, because then I had somebody that would take me there and play with me, and and maybe I did want to isolate, because in the end, as we were gambling together, we sort of ended up not gambling together anymore. First, we were putting our jackpots together, and then as the addiction got worse and worse, we would start being separating the money, and you can't, being very protective of what we've won, and competition, and it was all this crazy stuff. And the funny thing is that it was a new relationship, and the whole time we were in this relationship, we were gambling. So we didn't even know each other really until we stopped. And it was, at that point, it was who are you? I don't even know you, because we weren't the same people that we were before we started gambling. I mean, it turned us into completely different people.
It's an amazing story. I think what we've both learned and heard from so many other people in gambling recovery is it's not a financial disease. It's a disease mostly regarding emotion and an inability to process life on life's terms. And so you talked about gambling came into your life much later, into your 30s or even your 40s, and then this brain aneurysm happens. And do you think there was something that brought you into gambling as your escape from that brain aneurysm versus any other particular kind of drugs, alcohol, any of those other vices that may be out there? Was there something that you can pinpoint that drove you to gambling?
No, not that I can pinpoint, and that's the problem. It's because if I didn't have the aneurysm, would I have gambled the way that I did? I don't know. Did I have another addiction that I would have replaced with gambling if I stopped? Maybe, but I'll never really know because it could be one, it could be the other. But the point is that it was something, and I can identify that as being something of a life problem. Mm-hmm. And, just like we may not have the same type of reason for gambling, the foundation of it is always the same, mm-hmm. which is life, living life on life's terms and having a life problem and seeing gambling as the solution.
Mm-hmm. So you have this brain aneurysm, then you start gambling, you meet Sebastian, you're both gambling together. You were on a 2-year gambling binge from kind of start to finish.
Yeah, door to door.
And can you talk about maybe the highs and the lows of what the experience was, whether you're talking about financial, emotional, spiritual, what was the journey from start to finish?
The journey was a roller coaster, and I would say that it was such a whirlwind that it's hard to say 5 years later or 7 years later, actually, after the start of it. There were so many lows, but so many highs. But I would say the main high would be the money, of course. I mean, we won a lot of money, and I think that's what kept us going back. Is the idea of winning more money, whether we needed it or not. Because honestly, we weren't gambling to solve financial difficulties. It was fun. It was fun until it wasn't. And it wasn't fun when, we won 7 figures and lost every single dollar of it.
Shit, wait, you won 7, so you hit $1 million plus on slots.
Yes, we played high limit slots, which is ridiculous to think that you could beat the house. Mm-hmm. There's no skill, absolutely no skill involved in pushing the button. And so, we were delusional. We actually declared ourselves professional slot machine players. And if that isn't the dumbest shit you have ever heard.
Right. Well, considering slot machines, I think, are federally regulated to beat the player 75 or 80% of the time.
Yeah, and it's not a secret either. Right. It's out there and everybody can read about it and know about it. But totally for some reason, I just ignored it.
Right. You have an algorithm nobody else in the world
has. I mean, I'm that smart.
Right. Yeah. And you're an accountant too.
I am. Right? I am an accountant, which makes the whole idea of all of this much worse because, I can manage millions of dollars of other people's money. But for some reason, I could not manage my own. So
when you guys hit the million, did you have a conversation at any point about let's take this money and get the fuck out of here and go live a beautiful life? Did that happen? Or?
I mean, I wouldn't say we had a conversation. I would say that Sebastian definitely mentioned that. I would say I definitely had this addiction worse than he did. He was able to say things like that, but I would beat him down with my voice was louder, so I could give me my money now, torment him until he would give in. And I did that a lot. I mean, manipulated him quite a few times just to get to.
Were you married before the big hit or after?
Actually, no. In one of the bigger nights, Sebastian was like, let's get married. I mean, it was very well thought through. It was oh, wow, I won a bunch of money and let's go to Vegas and get married. But being the controlling person that I was like, I don't like the date, and I was really into slot machines. So it was 2017. So it was hey, let's go and get married 7/7/17. So now I have this anniversary that 7/7/17 always reminds me of slot machines. But, I'm not going to give it up just because of that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was, it was definitely spontaneous, but controlling at the same time. There was no real plan. It was just kind of I don't know. And I feel after the fact that maybe it was my second marriage. So I feel like maybe I didn't give enough of an experience for Sebastian. Got kind of gypped on that one. Okay. But he got kind of gypped on a lot of things. But I'll tell you, it's weird because I feel this sort of guilt towards, bringing him in the first place and all of the manipulation that I did. But at the same time, like, he did enjoy it and he was willing to be there. And there were moments where he definitely showed me that he had the same addiction that I did. Only mine was just a tad bit worse. But yeah, I mean, it was just crazy. But yeah, definitely those moments of excitement, it was like we could do anything. And that's something that he reminded me of after we stopped, is that at one point I said, we can have anything that we want. Whatever we can have and do whatever we want. And we basically did, with no regard to anything. Yeah. No regard to our lives, to like the people in our lives. We just did whatever the fuck we wanted. And it got us in a very expensive seat in Gamblers Anonymous.
So you get married 7/17/17.
7/7/17.
And all this whirlwind of money comes, and then what happens?
Well, the end of it, the last part of it was that I'm a contractor, and so my job had ended, and so we were going on vacation. Went to a reunion in Arizona, and then we went to New England to visit my family. And while we were there, we decided to check out the biggest casino in the country, which is in Connecticut, Foxwoods. And we took all the money that we had with us. Against my mother actually said something to me as I was walking out the door. She's like, "You don't need all that money. Let me hold on to some of that for you." And she like took it from me, but then I grabbed it back out of her hand and took off, and we went, but we lost it all, and like we didn't even have money to get back home for the toll.
So wait, so let me just interrupt. Do you think your mother knew you had a problem with gambling at that time when that happened? That sounds really interesting.
A mother is a mother, and I think mothers do know, but she just, I guess, probably wanted to believe that it wasn't as bad as it was. She thought maybe I was joking around or whatever, but I think that she eventually, I was able to tell her that it was as bad as it was. I just didn't have to go through her saying, "I told you so," or "I was right." Yeah, I think my mother knew just because she's my mother,
Woman's intuition.
Yeah.
So then what happens?
So I had an open-ended, I bought a one-way ticket because I didn't have a job to go back to, and I just thought I'd spend some extra time with my family. But while I was there, I got a job interview, and I never passed those up. So I needed to get back, and so my father had to buy his 43-year-old daughter some plane tickets back to Los Angeles, and unfortunately for him, there was only first-class seats left. And he was so mad. I was lucky in the sense that they didn't abandon me after I told them everything that had happened, and, I lied to my parents a lot, my dad especially, running out of money in Vegas and calling him and telling him like, "Oh, I got robbed, Dad. Can you send me some money?" And he would be like, "Oh, let me see a police report," because that's just how my dad is. And so I'd have to go, and I would go make one, like arts and crafts, in the hotel room. And this is to my dad. I love my dad. What am I doing? It's just crazy stuff. And I just, I'm just happy to be away from it.
You became a person you never could imagine. So you became somebody was unimaginable. You're lying to your parents.
Lying to my parents.
And things are starting to unravel a little bit.
A little bit.
Okay. And you get here pretty quick, I think, to the bottom of the barrel, yeah?
Yes. So I'm down. I get back to Los Angeles. I'm broke. We had left a few $1,000s here. But like Los Angeles, that doesn't go very far. So I went to my job interview, and, everything went fine, I thought. So a couple of days later, there was a knock on the door, and it was the police. And they had come to arrest me because I committed a crime as a result of my gambling. And I got caught. So they came to arrest me because the job that I had just left had found out that I had embezzled money from them, and they filed a police report. That was the real rock bottom for me. I mean, not having money, I guess you can be resourceful. We were all resourceful as gamblers, getting money to gamble with when we ran out. But this was something completely different. You know, this is something like, I don't think anybody that knows me or, you know, spent any amount of time with me would ever think that I had the capacity to do something like that. And it really wasn't me in a sense. I mean, that was a gambler, Alyssa, who just apparently felt like she could do whatever the fuck she wanted. And that's exactly what the problem was. You know, like the idea of being a big shot and like having all this money and walking around like, you know, we owned the place, and then having the audacity to steal money from my company. It's just crazy. And on top of that, I had at the time a compliance consulting company. That's how crazy this is, because that company taught small production companies how to detect fraud. And here I am committing it. Yeah, so that was really, really when things got bad, and I couldn't find a job for a while after that. My reputation was ruined, and I didn't go to GA right away, but I did go back and gamble a couple of times because I didn't really know the severity of what was happening, you know.
You were arrested. Can you tell a little bit about that story? Because I think it's important to share with the audience that horrifying experience of what happened to you, that when they knocked on that door and took you away.
The experience is actually the thing that I look at as being one of the better things that happened. That experience, especially in Los Angeles, is just such you realize when you're sitting in a cold jail cell and your life is in shambles. You know, it's in those moments that like you experience, because I feel like I was in a bubble, you know, that I just felt like I was invincible. I was lucky. Nothing was going to happen. But then when you're in there and you're like, oh my God, how did I get here? And I couldn't blame anybody else. I had to take full accountability because there was nobody else to blame it on. I mean, I did this. So it really humbled me as a person, I guess. I never want to be in that situation again. I don't think I would ever put myself in that situation again. But it's been a long battle. And I think that what's important is to understand that that crime was committed as a direct result of the gambling addiction. That crime I would have never committed if I didn't have the gambling addiction. And it is a true public health issue, this addiction. And it's such a silent one, and it's hard to see on people. It's hard to smell on people like drugs or alcohol. So it's something that I feel like, you know, it's going to become a very massive issue. And so it's really important that we remember that when people commit crimes as a direct result of an addiction like that, that maybe there should be some other kind of rehabilitation or punishments for those types of crimes. You know, I still have to pay restitution. I still have to pay all the money back. I had to file, claim it on my taxes, all of that. I didn't go to prison, but I definitely felt like I was in prison. But on the other hand, I do feel grateful, and I do feel like, that there's legislation out there that can, help situations like this. And I happen to fall into one of those. So rock bottom is a rough place to be, but sometimes it takes that for somebody to get, where they need to be in recovery.
So you go to your first GA meeting, you said out of desperation and hope that there was food.
Hunger.
but that you stayed. And so what happened that night that you stayed despite the lack of food? And then if you can tell everybody a little bit about the beginnings of that journey of recovery after that meeting.
Ironically enough, that night there was only one other woman in the room, which is something that I've found is pretty common. There are definitely more men in GA than there are women, and I feel like there are a lot more women gamblers out there. I just feel like as women, oftentimes, or as like wives or mothers, I think women feel like they have to be the strong one, and so showing out that they have any kind of weakness, like an addiction, like gambling, is something that would then prevent them from being a good mother or a good wife. So I think it's harder for women to come into the rooms or seek out recovery. But I do notice now that there are a lot more women willing to seek recovery because there's a lot more venues for recovery now, like through Zoom, or it doesn't have to be in a meeting near you, in person, because a lot of these places in this country don't have meetings near them. I stayed in the room because even though there weren't a lot of women there that night, there was one woman there who I thought, wow, she is like naming off things like machines, like, oh, that machine. And I was like, this is great. Like, she understood. Like, this is some woman saying, oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Like, I played slot machines and they played only, like one time in their life with their, for 5 minutes walking through a casino in Vegas. But she was like, she really knew. So I felt comfort in that, because it wasn't that I wanted to talk slot talk with her, but it was that I wanted somebody that would understand exactly what I was doing, right? Because there are so many different forms of gambling.
Yeah. I think that's one of the great gifts of GA. You can go into any room in any city, in any state, in any country, and I think people in those rooms understand exactly the way we mentally and emotionally process gambling.
Absolutely.
Right? And
it does not discriminate.
It doesn't discriminate.
It crosses all cultures.
All cultures, all ages, it doesn't matter. And I think that's why GA is so special, because it's that community of people that have been through the war together. And didn't die on the hill. And didn't die. Though we all felt like we either should be dead or we were going to die.
I wanted to.
Yeah,
for sure.
And, we all have our loved ones that are often the fall people for it. No matter how much I think somebody loves us and we love them, if you haven't been through this addiction, it is impossible to completely understand the way somebody like Alyssa or I process gambling, right? It doesn't mean anybody loves us any less or we love them any less, but...
Well, I don't know about that.
Okay.
Try gambling with your partner. Come out of that and see if they love you any less.
Well, we're going to get Sebastian on this podcast soon, and we're going to explore that part of the story, because you guys have a super unique experience that does not often happen out there. So it's going to be great for our audience to hear that perspective and to hear that journey, because there's got to be other people, even though it may be rare, there are other people out there that are in that experience, right?
Absolutely. And it's not as rare as you think, actually.
Yeah.
It's just rare in Los Angeles. But I feel like I've met a lot of couples.
Yeah,
along the way.
Or maybe just people don't talk about it as
That's
openly,
true. Maybe
right?
they don't.
Okay. Well, and so now you're almost 5 years clean now, and you've done that really through the GA program, right? So, what's been that journey been like? There's a lot of people out there that are put off by GA.
Yes.
Don't quite buy into it, can't quite get into it.
And I can completely understand that.
Religious component or a perception of that. So what would you say about GA and what it has to offer?
Well, in terms of GA or any recovery program specifically, I would like to plead the fifth on that. But what I will say about recovery in general, as a whole, not any specific one, but just in general, I feel like this is not an option to not have some type of recovery in your life when you're trying to stop an addiction. You need to have that community support around you. You need to be around people that know what you're going through and can understand how you feel. And it doesn't hurt to work on yourself a little bit once in a while. I think for a lot of people, recovery is a spiritual journey, and one that people wouldn't take on their own. I never sat down and I think I need to take a spiritual journey today. I never did that, but I'm so glad that I did, because recovery has helped me in so many ways, not just to stop gambling, but in other areas of my life. GA, I don't have the best experience, and that's just me being real. But I think it's what you make out of it. And I still, regardless of how I felt about the program, I still went every day. You know, I still go to meetings 4 times a week, you know, because it's not about how I feel about the program as much as it is about how I feel about my recovery. And my recovery is important to me. And if this is the program that's going to help me, give me the tools to get through this recovery, you know, and the community that is so necessary, you know.
Yeah, and I think what's great for you, like knowing your sponsor and that journey you've been on with her, that miracle wouldn't have happened if not for GA, right? And your
absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't meet her. Where would I meet her? Randomly.
You and I for sure would not be here talking. If
I don't think I'd have a sponsor if I wasn't in, you know, in a recovery program.
Right, but I think what you talk about is really real for people, and sometimes you have to go to a number of different GA rooms and meetings before you find sometimes the one that works for you. And I think that's important for people to understand. You know, it is not a one size fits all. It is not every room is the perfect room, and it really is sometimes about connecting even with one person in one room who you can relate to and connect with. And that was kind of my story when I first started, and that was more in the Zoom world versus in person before.
That's what's so beautiful about the Zoom is that you have so many more opportunities to go in and find a room that suits you. Yeah. Whereas like before the pandemic, before Zoom, it was so limited. But now, I mean, you know, you can go into a room at midnight and it's in Ireland, and maybe you understand what they're saying, maybe you don't. That's right. But we're all telling the same story, and we're all there for the same reason, and that's the most important thing.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for answering all the questions. I know that's going to help a ton of people out there as they get to know you on your journey. So when we come back from the break, Alyssa is going to ask me some questions about my gambling history and my recovery, and looking forward to introducing myself to all of you. We'll be back shortly. We're going to flip the story a little bit. Flip the switch, and Alyssa's going to put me on the hot seat now.
It's so hot.
Go for it. Let's see what we got.
All right, Eric. Well, I'm excited to do this because you do have a pretty amazing story. Very interesting. So I would like to start by asking you, did you hit a rock bottom in your gambling? Was there a defining moment in your gambling? And I'm going to ask you this before I ask you to tell the whole story, because I like to start with the end.
Thank you. So the rock bottom was June 13th, 2021. It was a Sunday morning. And after many times being busted and caught in my lies, this was the final time. And what happened that morning was I had one credit card left that I did not max out. And I always told myself, regardless of how much debt I was in with credit cards and loans and personal stuff, that I wouldn't go into that credit card. It was like my lifeline, you know, because you feel like you got to have some kind of emergency. And
in case you needed gambling money.
In case you need gambling money. And within like 5 seconds of realizing, I'll never go into that card, I grabbed that card and I signed it up with the sports book that I was using, and that was it. You know, within probably 10 minutes, that money was all bet and gone. And then shortly thereafter, my partner walks in the room. He starts questioning me about finances, and, you know, we hadn't done that in a while, and we'll get into that whole backstory. And that was it. That was the day that I was going to be busted for the last time, and I admitted yet again that I had lied about everything. And the reason I will always remember that as not just the the last bet and the most financially, the financial end of everything, it was the worst emotional moment, because the look in his eyes when I had to say again, I did it again. Oof. I never want to experience the pain that I inflicted on him that I did in that moment. And so for many different reasons, that morning was my rock bottom.
Wow. So you had like a financial and emotional rock bottom at the same time. I mean, I guess we all do, but like, it seems like that really had an impact on you, seeing what you did to
It was like a collision course that all train wrecked at that perfect, imperfect moment.
Right, right. So then what did you do after that?
He said, well, this is just too much. Like, you got to go, you got to figure it out. And I had been with a therapist for over a year. And but I was lying through a lot of that therapy.
I think a lot of people do that.
And I had refused, despite my therapist's suggestion, I had refused to seek out Gamblers Anonymous. So I got a hold of her that morning, and I said, hey, we have an emergency. I need to get a hold of you. We need to talk as soon as possible. And she said, well, the soonest I can talk to you is Tuesday. Because I didn't, at that point, I had maybe bi-weekly meetings with her. So then it was 2 days between that morning and we got on a Zoom call with her on that Tuesday, June 15th. And, that's when I told her everything. And she basically said, I'm going to reiterate to you what I told you like a year and a half ago when we first started talking, which is we can keep working together and I can try to help you, but you really have to go seek help through Gamblers Anonymous, because I can't help you get to where you need to go, but the people in that fellowship and that they're going to be the ones that can help you, because they're the only ones that can really understand what you're going through. Right. And that was the first night I went into my first GA meeting on Zoom.
Crazy. Mm-hmm. Now, I know your story, so I know that you were gambling quite a bit longer than I was before you hit that rock bottom. Tell us kind of how it started and, how it progressed from there.
Yeah, for me, it was when I was a teenager. I mean, it started with card games with my family and friends when I was probably 17. And I was barely working a part-time job at that time, so the little income I got, I mean, I didn't have any debt or whatever, but we weren't gambling with a lot of money, so it was just kind of like Friday night, once a week or every other week, we'd play. What got me a little bit more escalated into it was when horse racing started to become into my life, and that was probably when I was 18, I think. I started going to the racetrack, and I loved it for some reason. I don't know why. I still, to this day, will never understand why horse racing became something that mattered. I mean, horses running around a track. It's like the same notion of like cars, NASCAR, just circling a track. Like, why did that become something that became exciting to gamble on? I will never understand why that was such a draw.
I mean, like, the race is over.
The race is over in like 1 to 2 minutes, and it's like, why did that become such a draw? I have no idea, but that was exciting to me. And then Vegas, when I was 21, I went to Vegas, and that's when I really got introduced to like all of the sportsbook stuff, and that was also including horse racing. But that's when the real action began, with all the betting on every kind of sports game you could possibly imagine.
Did someone introduce you to that, or did you just?
Well, I was there with family, so But
you didn't have like an older cousin or brother or
not
something that was like, "Hey, let's go."
No.
I gotta.
No, I mean,
like
I was there with my family and such, but sports betting was natural to me because I grew up around it. I love playing sports. I always loved watching sports. So that became a natural progression, because now it was, I can watch all these games, and I can now actually place a bet to even increase the the fun of it, which is what it was at the time. Like, this is fun. I'm going to watch the game anyway because I love watching the game, but now I can put some money on the game, right? It seemed so innocent at the time, and that's what really started it. And then what became, I guess, the start of the obsession was that it was such an isolated experience, because you can bet on stuff and then you're just sitting there isolated watching the game.
Oh, like, I always thought that everybody in the sports book were like, all like, camaraderie and stuff, like, ooh.
Not me. No. I didn't want any part of that. No, I was a total escape isolation gambler. I was not one of these people that wanted to be around other people when I gambled, Like, you see people at the craps tables, right? Or the blackjack tables, or like, I want to be the big shot and the ego man. Like, I couldn't disappear quicker from as many people as I possibly could. And so the sportsbook was kind of that perfect place for me. I could just sit in my little seat, watch whatever games I wanted to watch, and I didn't need to talk to anybody.
So you drove 4 hours to Vegas to sit in a corner.
Yeah, that's right.
Watch.
That's right. Well, right, because at that time there was no online opportunity, and then that's when everything really changed. When I discovered online sports betting, that's where my disaster really, really took hold, because now it was a 24/7 operation. My casino, my sportsbook was in my hand, in my pocket at all times, next to my bed. That's where it all began. My 20-year spiral into a gambling addiction really took hold of me.
And how was the online sportsbook versus the in-person sportsbook? I mean, was it just the access that was a lot easier that exacerbated it, or was it there was more excitement or more of a thrill or more of a rush?
It was the access. I didn't have to drive anywhere, and it was
24/7. On the bathroom.
You could bet in the bathroom, and I did it a lot. I did it a lot. Yes, I mean, that became real, and I think what exacerbated it was now I was betting on things that I would have never bet on in Vegas. Right? I'm waking up at 2:00 in the morning, and I'm betting on Chinese ping pong. Nice. And Australian soccer, and I mean, just things that are unimaginable and things I knew nothing about.
I was just gonna say things that you know so much
about. And that's when it really became apparent, although I didn't really want to admit it or realize it, but I mean, it's not a normal way of thinking and living. At 2 a.m. betting on soccer in China or whatever, and so. That's when it all really started to spiral for me, and it became just a total mission in escapism and check out and not deal with my life. And it wasn't until many, many years later, now in recovery and starting to be able to think back to the early days of why this started in the first place, why all this really happened, because this was never about money. Right. When I started gambling, I had no financial issues. I never was gambling because of money. And even when I got into debt and to more debt and exorbitant amount of debt, I was not continuing to gamble thinking that I was going to bail myself out of that debt. I wanted to gamble until I would die.
Right.
That's what it became for me, because it became such an obsession that I didn't know any other way to exist other than continue to make the bet at all costs.
Right. And now 3 years in recovery, would you say that, you can make better choices and deal with life a little
better?
The
miracle that I'm nearly 3 years and have not made a bet is an absolute miracle.
So wait, in total, you gambled for how many years?
Oh, I guess I would just use the Vegas early 20s, right? So nearly 30 years.
Wow.
Before I found, recovery when I was, 49.
That's crazy.
Almost a 30-year addiction. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, okay. So now that you gambled for 30 years, you lost all your money. You used the credit card that you weren't going to use. You called the therapist, and she said she wouldn't work with you unless you seeked it out to be around some people that could understand you better. Cut to that day, June 15th, and you say, all right, I'm going to go to this meeting on Zoom. What was your experience like?
I don't remember any of it other than everybody was very nice. They read to me the 20 questions that we're all familiar with GA, and I answered, I think, yes to almost all of them, and the few that I didn't answer yes to, it was just because I thought I should say no to some of them. Just because
you didn't want to get them
I didn't want to be perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not perfect in anything, so why should I be perfect on that test either? But it was numbing. So I don't really remember much from that night other than people were nice, and then it was like, okay. That Zoom meeting happened to be a nightly meeting since we were in the pandemic, and there were a lot of Zoom meetings that were blossoming because of that. So I went back again, and I went back to that same meeting for 26 consecutive days.
Wow.
And that's where my recovery journey first began.
So how did you make it out of the Zoom room into like the in-person?
Because after 26 days, I just said to myself, because what was starting to happen, I was starting to get hope.
Right.
I was starting to feel like I could make it. Maybe this could be it. And just to kind of go back to like, it was like day 10. One of the guys that was in one of the meeting, his name's Jason, and we were conversing on text after one of the meetings, and we went on for like 3 or 4 hours, I think. We were just texting, and he's back east, and I'm on the West Coast, and it's the middle of the night for him, but he didn't care. Like, we were just totally engaged in the dialogue, and I really felt like for the first time somebody understood the way I processed gambling. And I could, like, again, I'm talking about betting on just crazy stuff that I could never possibly imagine, and I thought there's no way anybody else in the world would do what I have done, because it was unfathomable to me.
Right.
And when he spoke that same language and understood exactly what I had done, I thought for the first time, oh my God, I'm not that unique. Somebody else has done what I've done.
Right.
So it gave me a sense of relatability that I never had before, and that gave me a sense of hope for the first time in all these years. So that kept me going in the Zoom, but then just something happened, and I realized I can't keep just being on camera on Zoom. Like, I'm in Los Angeles, and there are in-person meetings even during the pandemic. They exist, and I need to go face this in person if this is really going to become what's going to be the savior of my life. And that's what it was starting to feel like it could be. And that's when I went to my first in-person meeting on day 27, and it changed my entire life for the better. You know, nearly 3 years in, and what the fellowship of GA has given to me and the program in general, not only did it save my life, it has given me now a total repurpose and allowed me to find what I'm passionate about and what I think I have a purpose to give to the world for the rest of my life.
Leaving that legacy.
To be determined.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen a transformation in you, even just recently. But, you know, when you know somebody for 3 years and you're in a kind of a situation that we're in together, it's interesting to see how we each evolve. And so anyway, back to your story. So you mentioned your partner and how you had to sort of tell him and come clean. I happen to know him, and he attends Gam-Anon, and we share a meeting with GA and Gam-Anon share a meeting. And your partner's story was the first story I heard from a Gam-Anon perspective, because I gambled with my husband. I didn't have that need to come clean to somebody. I did not realize the kind of pain that our partners or family members experience. Tell me a little bit about how it affected him, and then in turn how it affected you, seeing how it affected him. I mean, that's got to be powerful.
Every day it gets more and more powerful. You know, at the beginning, I didn't even know Gam-Anon existed, nor did he. So we were both brand new to this whole 12-step experience, right? So we discovered this joint meeting that you were referencing where, both GA and Gam-Anon members get on the same meeting and just start talking about common problems, both from the gambler's point of view and the family member or spouse, friends. Everyone has a loved one who's affected. And that's when we, I think, both started to finally experience the power of that process. And as things have evolved, and then he started to go to Gam-Anon only meetings where it's Gam-Anon focused on their program and it's all people affected by loved ones, then he gets to start to go down his own path of recovery for himself. Because, everybody, now being in a 12-step program for nearly 3 years, I certainly believe everybody in the world can benefit from a 12-step program, whether you're an addict or not.
Agreed.
Or whether you're involved with an addict or not, because everybody has problems. Everybody has emotional baggage and trauma. And, I think there's so many people and loved ones who don't seek this kind of help because I think whether it's stigma or shame or the most common thing I think is from the loved one, well, that's your problem.
Right.
It's not my problem. You go figure out your problem, and when you're done, let me know. Right? And I think that exists, and I also think that's the grand tragedy of so many relationships and family units that are broken and never repair because somebody isn't really going down the recovery journey for themselves.
Right.
My partner, he has done that and he's continued to do it and he's evolved in it and he's become sort of a guiding force for a lot of people in the LA area for Gam-Anon, and he's sort of like one of the main faces now for Gam-Anon in Los Angeles, which is just, it's mind-blowing that he's going down that path and becoming that person. We'll get him onto this show to talk about his own story, but that's not who he is naturally. He's not, he's more of an introvert versus an extrovert. But going through recovery is allowing him to find his self and his own voice, which got squashed because of all my years of being an addict. And, the reality is when you're an addict and you affect somebody else, you are robbing that person of allowing them to live their life free from your shit, Yeah. And I stole that from him for all those years. And watching him now go through that journey for himself to find his own voice and get stronger. Trust me, and you know this too, because you know us well. There's a lot of discomfort in that, because the power of recovery on both sides is that you start to grow stronger as a human being. But that also means that you may build up some anger, some resentments, and you start to face things individually and as a couple that are very uncomfortable because you're finally finding that ability to speak up.
And as the gambler, you're finally feeling things instead of being numb all the time.
Right.
And that kind of makes it a little bit harder to navigate because, you're just so used to being numb.
Right. And our relationship for so long was numb, certainly from my end, because I had no ability to actually feel anything, and anything that I was feeling was more on false pretense.
Right.
It was just kind of numbingly navigating myself through life and through the relationship. So it's great because everything's now kind of out in the open and based on honesty, but that also comes with a lot of difficulty in navigating the course of the future. But
I guess that's what adults do.
That's what we're adulting.
Imagine that. We are adulting.
We are adulting, but it's a painfully beautiful journey, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. And, you're very active in the program, in recovery, and you do a lot of service for other people and for the program itself. Would you say that has had a true impact on your recovery experience? Has it accelerated it? Has it hindered it? Or is it just something that, you're supposed to do because they say you're supposed to do? What's your take on being of service?
Yeah, I think it's been a crucial part of the journey. When I came into the program, I had no idea what it was about, and I had no idea what I was really supposed to do. And so I just started to listen to people talk. And when I started to hear about people coming to these meetings with dozens of years of experience, 20, 30 years, and they're coming to meetings and they're giving advice and they're so nice and kind. And it's like, if you haven't gambled for 20, 30 years, why are you here? Go live your life. What are you doing? And then what I came to realize is the reason that they haven't gambled for 20 and 30 years is because they keep coming to the meetings.
Right.
And then it just started to resonate that this is really, truly a program about learning about something much more important than just not making a bet. Right. And that's learning about being a better human being, growing some spirituality, becoming a more humble person, starting to think about other people before you think about yourself. We're all egomaniacs as gamblers, and everything's about us. It certainly was about me. It really becomes a complete life transformation is really what the program has given to me, and a big part of that is just naturally wanting to start to give back and help other people. And we say that the one primary purpose of this program is to help the next compulsive gambler who's still suffering.
Yep.
And
the only requirement.
It's the only requirement. And all I can say is it's a program that works. It just works. And I was the biggest doubter when I came in because I had all these misconceptions as we talked about earlier about what it would be. And the program has not only saved my life, but it has given me a total purpose of how to live going forward. And as a result, I'm, making a ton of life changes that are setting me down a more purposeful path and a spiritual path, and hopefully something that's going to last wonderfully for the rest of my life.
Are you getting a rush from the thought of living your life? I mean, it almost seems like it's as good as placing a bet. That same rush that you would get from placing a bet, you can still get from living your life and just...
It's amazing. And I think I never knew how to live my life before I was gambling. And this for me goes all the way back into my childhood when I started to realize as a young boy that, I started to have feelings about other boys, and when you start to realize at a young age that you're different and you don't know how to process that either. Yeah. And I spent a decade or more trying to deal with who I was as a human being and realizing that I was gay and doing that in my formative years. And that was the last thing that I wanted to be. And that was really the start of my emotional incapability to deal with my life. And it spiraled for years and years and years. And even after I came to terms with that and came out of the closet and met Edgardo and had this wonderful life as a gay man, and I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world, but I already then was spiraling into addiction. And it was like one emotional incapability to deal with life into another. And then now here I am, once I finally found the GA rooms and, at 49 years old and now almost going on 52, when I have now finally realized how to deal with my life.
It's never too late.
It's never too late.
It's never too late. So I guess I want to just close it out by asking you, what would you say to somebody who felt like they were struggling with a gambling addiction but were too afraid to take the next step? What advice would you give?
Look, it feels like an impossible place to be. And like I said, on that day, I really thought my only option was to die.
Yeah.
And all as I can say is, if I, as broken as I was, can reach out for help and find the right support. And look, I think Gamblers Anonymous is the place to do that. I think the program is amazing, but I'm not here to tell the world that that's the only way to get help. And so, however it is you're going to do it, you just can't do it by yourself. There's no, any of us who are bound by addiction, if you could have figured out how to deal with it yourself, you would have. And so there's no shame in reaching out and saying, I need somebody. I can't do this myself. And there's wonderful resources out there between Gamblers Anonymous and any number of things you research. It's all out there. Just don't try to do it yourself. Just give it a try. And even if you start and you continue to relapse, keep trying. And at some point, hopefully you will make that right connection to the right person or to the right meeting or whatever your outlet of support's going to be, that it finally sticks. If you keep trying to do it alone, sadly, statistically, the outcome is going to be you're going to probably die, or you're going to probably be in prison, or you're going to be insane, or some combination thereof. Your life doesn't have to be that way. You and I doing this podcast today, you almost 5 years, me almost 3 years.
It's insane.
It's freaking insane.
I think about you and I like being that far along, and just like it shocks.
And the amount of happiness, hope, and peace of mind surrounded by so many people that enrich our lives. It's a total miracle, and there's just no other way to explain it than that.
Thank you for joining us at the Gambling Recovery Lounge, our first experience. If you have any questions, concerns, or you want to tell us how we did on this first experience, you can reach out to Eric, ERIC, at thegamblingrecoverylounge.com, or me, Alyssa, ALYSSA, at thegamblingrecoverylounge.com.
Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. We look forward to doing the second experience podcast. Stay tuned for that and much, much more ahead.